Welcome to this week's Pipeline podcast. Today we're here with Adam Schoenfeld. Adam, as I'm sure everyone on the internet already knows, has had a awesome background founding Simply Measured, which has gone on to be really successful, and then recently left to become CEO of Siftrock, and now general manager at Drift after they were acquired a couple of weeks ago. So Adam, welcome, and thanks for doing this with us.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here.
So Drift, what made you guys want to make the move to work with them?
Yeah, it was a tough decision. I mean, like, building your business, right? You're growing, you're cranking along every day, and the idea is out there that maybe someday you would be acquired.
You'd
right?
sell it, or
potentially, right? Like that's a path that you can go. And we didn't know that something would come up this soon, but we kind of fell in love with Drift in a couple ways. Like, we were a customer and had used the product. We were really excited about this movement that they're building around conversational marketing.
Right.
I guess I should say the movement we're building now.
Right.
I'm just a couple of weeks on the job, so it's still like this transition.
Still getting assimilated a little bit.
Exactly. So as a customer, we were really excited. And then as we just kind of got to know the management team there and the people there, we were really excited about the culture and sort of how they put customers at the center of everything they do.
Yeah.
So it seemed like a really good kind of culture fit there. And then as we started to talk to them about how we do it, like what would this acquisition look like, we felt like it was really complementary and we could create a lot of value together for our customers. And so we signed up to join with those guys just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and just tell everybody real briefly, what does Siftrock do as a product?
Yep. And
is that going to continue under Drift?
It will continue. So what we do is we basically help marketers manage email replies at scale. So if you send out emails where you want people to respond back, then Siftrock can help you sort through those, find the good ones, route them to your sales team, and keep track of everything. Mm-hmm. We integrate with things like Marketo and Eloqua and keep everything in sync for you when you're sending out your email campaigns. So that fits really well with Drift's vision, which is conversational marketing, and they basically enable real-time conversations on your website.
Right.
So if you can think of Siftrock as kind of enabling conversations over email and Drift doing this on the website, there's a lot of complements there in terms of the kind of marketing motion that we help support.
So in a way, it's allowing Drift to kind of expand into an additional channel that maybe they didn't have access to before, that the email inbox. In addition to the stuff they're already doing with chat on the site.
Exactly. So it kind of gets Drift into email, and we'll be thinking of ways that we can make email and web chat work together really well and give, because our philosophy at Drift really is about the buyer is in control now, and we want to basically remove barriers for people to buy. It's kind of ridiculous, right? In B2B, sometimes the lengths you have to go to just to purchase something.
Yeah, sure. You gotta sit through an hour-long demo. You gotta talk to 10 different people, fill out all these forms.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just did one the other day. I love this. It was something I was basically, I'm just can I give you my money, please?
Right.
I submit the form. I wait an hour. The SDR calls me. I'm I really want to purchase the service. He's well, I have a few questions for you. I'm okay, can we bang out the discovery? Let's go. And you just know it's coming, the discovery, and then he wants to do an on-site in person. So
right.
In some scenarios, that's obviously a great process for the buyer, but
right.
in a lot of scenarios, the buyer doesn't need all that. So we're just thinking of ways to take those barriers out.
Our VP of sales, our head of sales here, Matt, always, says, look, the biggest thing people forget in B2B marketing is that you're not talking to leads. You're just talking to people. And they just want to be treated like people. They don't want to be treated like leads.
It's such a basic insight, but it's funny because we have 20 or 30 years of history that's leads and opportunities and funnels and demand units, and we've really kind of engineered these systems that make it easy to just forget, hey, you are actually selling to another human being. Right.
This isn't just a form submit or an MQL. There's a human behind this.
Right.
And what do they want? And so it sounds like, like you said, lots of products working on, all these different little ways to remove the humanity, and Drift and now with Siftrock are trying to kind of put it back in.
Exactly. And I think there's others thinking from that lens as well, which is a pretty basic idea. If you look at B2C, it's already gone that way, right? You walk into the Apple store, you feel like a human. You walk into the Tesla store, you feel like a human, right? Like Peloton, right? If you think of the B2C brands that are really exceptional in terms of their customer experience, it's happening there. So I think that movement's happening in B2B now as well. So yeah, it's removed barriers. It's helped salespeople meet the buyer where they are and help marketers meet the buyer where they are. And there's lots of things we can do under that umbrella. So no shortage of kind of opportunities.
Yeah, no shortage of problems to solve.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Got it. So as you guys were going through the acquisition, like what was that process like?
Oh man, it was hard. Honestly, it was emotional. It was. I want to write stuff about it. It was. It was a hard process because you're thinking from a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah.
Like, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my team? What does this mean for my customers? What's my future going to look like? What's their future going to look like? So it was a hard exercise, and it was hard to like separate the kind of the rational process from the emotional stuff that's going on, right? When you have this company that's kind of your baby, and you've done all this work, and
and you have you're in total control of it, and because you guys were bootstrapped also, so you didn't have VCs begging you to sell it or pressuring you to sell it or anything.
Exactly, which you know well, right? It's and in some ways that's a beautiful thing, and you're like, wow, do I want to hold on to this?
Well, you mentioned before we came on, like, hey, I have a boss now. Like that's something you probably haven't had a boss in years, really.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So how has that transition been?
It's been good. It's been good. I have a very good boss. I'm reporting the CEO at Drift, and this
is David, right?
He's a guy I can learn from. So that was a big calculus on the deal, I think, as well for Chris, my co-founder, and I. When Chris looked at Elias, the CTO, and when I looked at David, the CEO, we both said, wow, those are people we can learn from. Both very different from us as individuals, but just have a track record, have kind of a model of thinking that we thought we could learn from as we grow our careers. So that was a big piece of it. I think there's probably a lot of exits. I'm doing air quotes. I know we're on audio, but a lot of acquisitions where you're kind of signing up for something that you don't want to do to get a check. Right. In this scenario, it was, the thing that we're going to do is actually exciting.
Well, that's like the standard, rest and vest model, right? It was like, okay, I'm going to, take this money. I'm going to do a, 3-year earn out. I'm going to hate every minute of my life. I'm going to try to do as little work as possible. If I'm at Facebook or something, I'll probably end up on sabbatical for the last year of it, trying to think of my next startup. And as soon as it's over, I'm gone.
Right.
And for you guys, it wasn't like that.
No. And look, that's probably a way people approach some acquisitions, and that might make sense, right?
Sure, it's a way to do it if that's the game you want to play.
Right, totally. But for us, that wasn't, and we were still so early in our journey that we wanted to keep going on what we were doing, and we wanted to kind of level up. So it was good in the regard of, when you're getting comfortable with something, sometimes that means it's time for a change. And I think we were just reaching the point where we're starting to be comfortable. Right. And now we're getting very uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. Broken through the plateau for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What advice would you give to other people who are considering doing something like this? Either just thinking about, hey, I've got a company I want to sell, or maybe they're in the process of selling it. What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think if they're just like, oh, I want to sell at some point, I'd give a piece of tactical advice, which is go out and network with the 5, 6, 7 companies that you think might buy you in 2 or 3 years. Right. Because I actually connected with David, the CEO at Drift, probably over a year before we did the deal. Right. And at that point, there was no real intent. Right. But I was like, hey, we like you guys. We're kind of in this area. Like, it would be great to stay in touch. And we would message back and forth, maybe once a month, and eventually had some calls. So I would encourage people to do that just from a tactical perspective if you ever want it to happen.
Just building that relationship.
Right. Because deals, these things can't happen overnight. Right. There's no way somebody can get comfortable in a very short amount of time with who you are and what you're about.
Well, certainly if they don't know who you are to begin with, it's never going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So you have to have awareness at some level to even have a chance. So that was didn't have intent around that one. You weren't thinking, let me go try to sell this company. You were just thinking, hey, this is an interesting product that we use.
I'd like to know, get to know the CEO of the company better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if you take that natural curiosity with the others in your space, like who aren't competitive,
Yeah.
it will probably yield something good.
Sure.
It might not yield an acquisition, but there's really no harm in that. And in terms of just kind of going through the process and things, I guess the advice I would give is just to kind of come to terms with the emotional side of it and really check in on that, right? And I think that these things can sometimes get going quickly and you get swept up in it. And I think there were times when Chris and I'd be cranking on the deal and he was kind of like still working on the business, and we kind of wouldn't have checked in just on how we're feeling and what's our gut and what's the emotion. And we probably could have done a better job of just like surfacing those things, dealing with them, and deciding what it meant.
Yeah. And doing that, like being intentional about that, like ahead of time.
Yeah.
Like not waiting till like, okay, we're ready to sign on the dotted line. And then like, how do we actually feel about this?
Right.
Yeah.
We just kind of, I'm pretty analytical. I kind of approached it that way at first. It's like, okay, here's a company that's interested in us. Okay, well, let's kind of think about what this would look like and define the strategy and think of the numbers and what would matter to us. And, we kind of like, it's like we're building a grid of what kind of deal we want. But we also have to do the just check in like, hey, would we want to do this? Would we want to give up the things that we like to get other things that we might like more or that are different?
Right.
And how does that feel?
Right.
So I'd encourage people to do that earlier in the process because I think it would help.
Yeah. You guys, before you came into this larger organization, you were a pretty lean company, right?
Very lean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you were bootstrapped. How many people were on the Siftrock team?
Just 5.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. So what was that process like of, running that lean organization and growing as a bootstrapped company?
Yeah.
And why did you guys make the choice to be bootstrapped?
Yeah. And you know this well. I know that you've, bootstrapped your business, and I know we've talked about the model a lot. And I think it works really well for certain markets, for certain types of companies, for certain founders, right? So we, the reason we chose it was just the market we were entering and the product we were building. We felt like there wasn't a lot of competition. It was kind of a niche, sort of a sub-segment of a bigger category like email marketing. Yeah. And we could kind of make the world small, and we could, acquire customers relatively cheap, and we could make the business model work, I guess, is the point here.
Right.
And then just in terms of
without a huge amount of capital.
Right. Yeah, we didn't need to go spend a ton of money to build the beta or to go acquire the first customer, right?
Well, and also the founder of the business, Chris, right, had already invested a lot of sweat equity in getting the product there, right?
Totally. Yeah. He spent about 2 years before I joined him building the product, getting the early customers on board. So it was a very
that helps.
Intentional slow. Yeah, that helps a lot.
That's
a lot of effort and certainly a big start. So yeah, we saw that, but that kind of validated the point that like, hey, we can kind of plod along here without any capital and start to see results. And then it was something we wanted to kind of try. We'd both been through venture-backed companies, and we were kind of like, hey, we want to experience this model and see how it changes our thinking. And we found that it brought a lot of focus, a lot of focus on the customer and how you're going to serve them. And that early cohort, you just like, you're like obsessed with their success. Yeah. Because you're like, man, it was so hard to get them on board, and I'm going to do everything I can to listen and to keep them and then to build around them. Yeah. You just can't bear the thought of one of these, customers that you put so much sweat into, not having a great experience. Totally. Yeah. Totally. Interesting. So, along that line, you went to pretty great lengths to do that. You actually did this interesting program that you wrote about on LinkedIn and posted about on LinkedIn called, what was it, CEO to SDR? Yeah. And you actually acted as an SDR for, what, a month or more? 2 months. 2 months. 2 months. So that must have been extremely interesting, especially in terms of learning about the customer and everything. What did you learn from that? Yeah. It's funny, like some of the best ideas or best learning opportunities come kind of randomly like that, right? Yeah. And if you went on LinkedIn and just be like, who is Adam Schoenfeld? People wouldn't probably say Siftrock or Simply Measured or Drift. They'd probably be like, oh, is he that CEO to SDR guy? Like literally, there's probably more people that think of me of that than this, which wasn't my intent. Right. It was just, we were getting to a point where we wanted to find additional growth channels. Right. And we were thinking about outbound and possibly hiring an SDR or doing more having our AEs do more prospecting.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, why don't I go try this for a while before we make an investment? And bootstrapping actually forces you to do things like that, because you're like, I'm not going to take the risk of making a couple hires here.
Sure.
Having it not work, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
because
need
you
to be
don't
really
have
confident.
the $1 million sitting in the bank account.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you just raised your Series A, no problem. You hire 3 SDRs, you hire a couple, maybe you have some AEs do prospecting, you experiment, you see what works. So I just did it myself and basically did the work of prospecting for about 2 months, about half my time.
Yeah. I mean, how did you find that improved your appreciation of the SDR? I mean, did it cause you to change anything about the way you were interacting with customers? I mean, what did you learn from it?
It was a great experience. I encourage any marketer to do it.
Yeah.
Because it really when you're doing an interruption based kind of approach to asking for attention, right? You really start to see what can get attention,
right,
and what doesn't.
Right.
You have a very high bar.
Right.
By default, when you cold email or cold outreach to somebody, they're trying to delete your message.
Right.
They're just looking for a reason to ignore you.
Right.
And so if you can overcome that and get them to respond, like, you found something magical.
Right.
Like, really, the deck is so stacked against you in this game. And so I thought it helped me in terms of writing and in terms of just thinking about attention and really pushing myself to make things relevant for the person that I'm trying to reach out to, which is just a great way to think if you're doing any kind of sales or marketing.
And going back to that, conversational marketing, or just like treating people like people.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, that actually does work.
Yeah. Always enjoy every time we get together, and obviously there's no exception. And we'll do breakfast again soon and do our regular Denver omelet. And
do you want to bring the mics over so that your audience can hear how we order our breakfast the same way?
It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea.
They're like, am I observing a date here, or is this a podcast of business?
Why can't it be both?
We're both big fans of breakfast.
Yes.
Which is, actually my mornings are a thing I love. So there's some wisdom or truth or kind of advice for your audience about mornings and breakfast and coffee and some of those rituals that you and I think both are aligned on that do help.
I get burned out by 2 p.m. So, my brain just doesn't work after 2 p.m. I have to cram it in. So I like to do the nice things in the morning, to help you start the day the right way.
I think there's been some research that your mindset at the beginning of the day actually influences the quality of your work and how you engage in the rest of the day.
Has to.
I wish that I was the kind of person that could just quote research and say where it came from.
I always admire those people.
I think there was research on this.
I know. We had Matt Hines on here in a past podcast recently, and this guy, has just a mind for the research that's unbelievable. Quoting stats left and right.
He's dialed in.
He's so dialed into that. I'm really envious of that. I just know that, I like my Denver omelets. That that I don't need any other data to back.
You
that
have
up.
your ritual, you have your routine. It works for you.
Exactly.
No, I'm definitely going to listen to Matt because I always learn from him. So.
Oh yeah, he's a sharp guy. Cool. Well, thanks again, Adam. I appreciate you doing this with us, and tell people how they can connect with you or your company.
Yep. So I'm on LinkedIn a lot. Just warning, if you do connect with me there, I post a lot. So you might connect with me and then later get sick of me.
Be prepared for the flood. Yeah.
It's unfiltered. I'm at Shoney, Schoeny on Twitter, where I post infrequently. And then email works too. Just now it's abs@drift.com.
Cool. Great. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jim.
We'll see you soon.